Hey guys, what's going on? It's your host Max Forti, your fragrance aficionado channel. Guys, if you guys haven't heard of the Fumechat is something that I'm sharing with you guys, my love and passion for fragrances, live at my Instagram. If you guys have not checked out the Instagram, I have the link below. This is episode 1 about reformulations. Also, you can comment down on this video and let me know what you guys want me to talk about. Formulations, flankers, vintage fragrances, niche versus, designer, whatever the case may be, guys, share your thoughts, and perhaps I will do another episode featuring one of your suggestions. Guys, thank you so much for all your support. Enjoy the episode of Fumechat 1, episode 1, 2018, Reformulations. I'll talk to you guys later. I wanted to start by saying, obviously, the reasons for reformulations. Why do we find reformulations in today's market? Why is it such a hot topic, if you will? Why do we talk about reformulations over and over again? Well, the number one is cost effectiveness. It's actually companies trying to maximize profits. I wouldn't say so much as cut corners, but I'd say that they would always look for to, replace certain ingredients if they can, not to really jeopardize the scent itself, but if they can actually maximize on price per mil. It's one of the reasons. It's not the main reason, it's not the only reason, but it's definitely one of the reasons that companies do reformulate certain fragrances. Second reason here for reformulations in fragrances, I'd say it's really the most prominent one. It's because of IFRA Regulations, International Fragrance Association, along with, regulations that have to do with standards or banning certain ingredients or products that are allergens, such as oak moss, which is one of my favorite notes in fragrances, and now you can only find in a synthetic form, among other, different compounds or components or materials like civet, just to name a couple. But there's many different components that have been banned throughout the years. Most importantly, to know about these bans is back in 2007, around that area, about 11 years ago, it came really hard and strong in the fragrance world, and really a lot of different things were banned, and a lot of these great fragrances that we came to love suffered in reformulations. So that's the second thing here. The third thing is synthetics, substitutes that we talked about in the topic 1 here, which is, taking the synthetics instead of the natural ingredients, but also try to obtain the same result as far as the compositions themselves. But a lot of these materials that were natural have, for some reason, become, not only because they're banned because of allergens or whatever the case may be, but because they have become banned, whether it's due to extinction or just, hard to obtain. Maceration processes become really hard to get the actual final product to make these fragrances. So in order to become more available or easier to manufacture some of these components, some of these fragrances, they had to go into the synthetic substitutes, which also opens the gate for another discussion, natural fragrances versus synthetic fragrances. We can actually make a whole different topic on that particular subject, which is really interesting. There's a lot of cool information to share with you guys. The fourth here is subtle variations as far as batches. One of the companies that we mostly talk about in the fragrance community is obviously Creed, with different batch variations, especially Aventis, which is like the most talked about variant as far as, the sweeter batches, fruitier batches, as opposed to smokier, woodier batches. Creed talks about, these such variations due to crops, certain ingredients, whether it's geranium, jasmine, whatever the case may be, whatever natural ingredient they're trying to obtain to macerate to make these fragrances that particular year, that crop, whether it was a colder, a warmer year, whatever the case may be, the actual fragrance, the composition itself will suffer a little bit. In it, it's going to be changing, whether it's going to be sweeter, a little darker, so forth and so on. But we do see these variations in batches from year to year, which we're always, scratching our heads and trying to find out why, how come. But that's one of the explanations that most companies will give us, which is crop variations or, trying to obtain such compounds. Fifth topic here in talking about reformulations would be modernizing the compositions. Making compositions like Chanel No. 5, for example, which is something that's been around since, the 30s. to become more appealing to this era, to youngsters out there, to get a new generation to love that fragrance, they sometimes have to modernize it because maybe it's a little too animalic, it's a little bit too bitter, too floral. So we see a lot of companies doing that, reformulating to make it more appealing to the masses or more universally accepted. That's another reason why we see a lot of reformulations. The last topic here, which is the sixth item, people notice reformulation through aesthetics, which is something we always talk about. If we see a fragrance that we really love and we know, like La Nuit de l'Homme, for example, I just talked about my favorite YSLs of all time. La Nuit de l'Homme is definitely one of them. And throughout the years, we saw the original bottle from 2009, which was really darker juice. The actual atomizer was thicker. This was actually real metal. So, longer lasting. And then throughout the years, we had a few different reformulations. This is actually a pretty good one. It's from 2011. It's still really good, sweet, lasts pretty good, 8 to 9 hours, but it's not as beastly as the original 2009 formulation. So that's just one thing here. And we see the difference here in aesthetics, in the bottle itself, in the packaging, in the color of the juice, the performance. I mean, it's countless things that we look for to see all these variations. For example, Coros, another one that I love. This is a vintage bottle from the 80s. Here is a current formulation. Here you can clearly see that there's no more silver shoulders in the new formulation. So you smell these, you see a lot more animalic going on here. This is a lot more subtle, easier to wear. So I'll give you an example, which is one of my all-time favorite fragrances, which is IFRA Pour Homme. This is a vintage first formulation, and this is a current formulation. I believe this one is from 2012. My wife loves this. Actually, she loves it more than the original formulation because she thinks it's too animalic, too dark, too green, too old-fashioned, too old-manish, and she prefers this one here. So again, it's a matter of personal taste. In closing, when it comes to reformulations, we have these conversations all the time in the groups. One more thing here, Dolce & Gabbana, which is one of my signature scents. Everybody knows me for this fragrance. I've been wearing this for over 20 years. I absolutely love it. My wife loves it on me. Funny thing here, a little anecdote. We were walking in New York City one day. I said, here, come here. We walked into Sephora. I was actually wearing this fragrance, going up on like 7 hours that I was wearing this already. It's still emanating and pushing off my skin. People were still smelling it. And I went into Sephora, I went to the section where they sold Dolce & Gabbana fragrances, and I took the current formulation made in the UK, and I sprayed on my hand, and I sprayed on a little piece of paper, and I gave her to her. And she's like, wow, it's like, it's a tenth of what you have at our house, which is the original formulation. Which goes to show, like the IFRA, like any other fragrance that we've seen around for 30, 40 years, 25, whatever, as it changes packaging, most of the time, I'd say 95 or more percent of the time, it does change the composition itself, which is kind of a shame, but it is what we have to live with. So, you have a couple options. It's a matter of personal preference. If you don't know, if all you know is a current formulation of something, you might love it and be okay with it. Like they say, ignorance is bliss. But if you do know and you did wear an earlier formulation of something, that might be a little bit off-putting because you might say, wow, I really love this. It lasted a long time. Now, the scent profile is the same, but it has changed a little bit and sometimes drastically. Sometimes like the Dolce & Gabbana Pour Homme, it's like a tenth of what the fragrance used to be, which is a real shame. But, with the La Nuit, for example, you can find other options. Instead of going with La Nuit de l'Homme, a lot of people went with Avant-Garde from Lanvin, which actually a lot of people liked it more than the current formulations of La Nuit. So it's an option that we have to find companies that actually put out fragrances that are similar to fragrances we love. So all in all, that's, a lot of information that they can, but it's, some of the research that I did to talk about and, reading that I do. So I want to know from you guys right now. We're going to do the little Q&A time, which I want you guys to participate. The first question I have for you guys, can ask whatever questions you have as long as it's within reformulations. But I want to know, does it really matter? Does reformulation really matter? As far as I'm concerned, yes, because I know the original formulations. But when it comes to you guys watching this, do you really care? As long as you smell good, as long as you get a little bit of what you used to get, you're okay with it. Or do you think you have to actually search for those vintage bottles and pay a lot more money than what's out there today? And most of the time you're going to pay 3-4 times more than the retail for these current formulations, or the gray market value, just because it is more sought after. There's a lot more people trying to find these vintage, or the people that really love the vintage fragrances aren't scared to pay a lot more money because they really want that particular smell that they initially fell in love with. Like I said, these are going to be probably once a week, about 25-30 minutes. I'll talk about a certain topic. I hope that you guys can come out here, we can interact, I can answer some questions within that topic, and we can continue to learn from each other, educate each other, and continue to share the passion and love that we have for fragrances. Guys, stay tuned. I'll have some really cool announcements in the next couple of weeks for some really cool things that are happening, and hope to continue to share that love and passion for fragrances with you guys for years to come. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Keep on spraying, stay fragrant, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.